and welcome to Alzheimer's Speaks Radio. I'm your host, Lori LeBay, and I'm so excited that you're joining us today. We are going to have a fascinating conversation as usual as we learn from people all around the world at all ages and stages of life. Stay tuned as we shift our dementia care from crisis to comfort.
Here we go. What you think about, you will bring about dementia change. We will.
Well, hi, everyone. I'm Lori LeBay, and I'm thrilled you can join us today. This episode is called Open Mic, and so we never know who's going to show up. We kind of pull the curtain back and see who's there, so I can't really even set it up other than it's always fun and exciting to hear what other people are doing. In the meantime, before we go there, I always encourage people to check out ALZHEIMER'S.com. That's our main website. From there, you can access all of our other programs. We have a free educational resource section that has tons of great things. Doesn't cost you a nickel. Some are videos, some are audio, some are tools you can download, things to read. And then our sister company, which is Dementia Map. Both are .coms. And Dementia Map has services, products, and tools around the world for people to access for free 24/7. And if you happen to have a service, product, or tool that you want in there that is dementia and caregiving specific, reach out to me and I can help you through that process. Otherwise, there's a little, join me on the front page that you can hop on as well. So with no further ado, let's pull that curtain back. Well, we've pulled back the curtain and look who is here with us today. Pastor Jeanette Jordon. She's been on the show before. She is renowned in the work she does. So I'm going to let her go ahead and introduce herself because she can do a much better job than I can. So welcome.
Thank you so much. And so honored to be sitting here with the great Lori LeBay. I just am so honored. Thank you for inviting me.
Well, I'm thrilled to have you. Why don't you give people a little background on how you even got into this space and what the heck you do now within it?
Okay. Well, back in 2012, I noticed some things going on with my husband. And he began to forget, began to repeat himself, just some things that were not normal. I kind of ignored it for a long time. But of course, it got progressively worse as I continued to ignore it. And so by 2014, it got to be really, really rough. And I started to journal the things that were going on in my house. I started to pray, asking God to help me through whatever was going on. I really knew nothing about Alzheimer's. Of course, I've heard the term. My husband was a well-known pediatrician in the south suburbs of Chicago. And so, of course, we, had talked about people who had Alzheimer's, but never really focused on it in our area of work. But after I saw what was going on with him, I began to kind of investigate the symptoms, talk to my children, and it sounded like something that my daughter had read in the book Wide Circumference of Love by Marita Golden. And she kept saying, Mom, you should read this book. You should read this book because it's sounding similar to what we're going through. And it took me a long, long time before I really wanted to accept it or acknowledge it or come to grips with the fact that this is really going to be what's going to happen to me. But it got to be so bad that I did read it and it just opened my eyes. And I says, okay, this is what's going on. And I started to prepare myself for the arduous journey that I found myself on. And so, of course, he lived with it for 7 years. He retired from pediatric practice in 2017. He practiced medicine from 2012 when I first noticed the symptoms all the way to 2017 because he was in and out. Some days I would think he was always saying that nothing was wrong with his cognitive abilities. He was just preoccupied. That was always his term. I'm preoccupied. You know, doctors, they have so much on their mind. Nothing's wrong with me. Well, I knew something was wrong. But in 2017, we retired him, and that's when really I think the disease started to spiral down. It changed his normal day, and he became agitated. He wanted to go to work. He would even get up and dress for work, even though he was retired. And that went on until I had to give myself permission to place him in a long term care facility because he became aggressive and agitated with suicidal, thoughts. And even though I had said all my life I would never ever place my husband in a long term care facility, we'd been married at that time 55 years. And I says, I'm going to take care of him until. And I quickly learned that you never say never because I could not take care of him 24/7 and be the best caregiver that I could possibly be. So I began to, care for him. And I saw what opened my eyes, Lori, was the fact that the care that he was given when he was in the long term care facility was not the care that I was giving him at home. No one really knew how to care for a person with this disease who no longer now can speak for themselves. Uh, and they were not allowing him to be social. They were not talking to him. And so I began to implement my own studies, and I began to insist that they make sure that he had socialization, that they made sure that they talked to him. And so in doing so, I learned a lot that I did wrong. I learned a lot that I did right. So in 2023, well, earlier 2022, I started to write a book. I says I need to help people because this care that people with dementia and Alzheimer's are getting is not working. They're leaving their loved ones. They're leaving those who are living with disease, sitting just with no activity, nothing, as though they're just zombies. And so I started to, play games with my husband. Even though he may not have remembered how to play checkers, whatever he did with those checkers were fine with me. He always won as far as you won. Or we would play cards. And of course, I would allow him to make up the game. Whatever he did with the cards, I would tell him I may put down an eight of clubs, and I'll tell him to put down an eight. And I would show him an eight, and he would look for the eight. He would put down the eight. I mean, just something to keep some of the cognitive stimulation as much as possible to continue while he was going through this journey that I knew where it was going to take us. But for as long as he could, I was going to make sure that he was a viable human being and that he was loved and that he was respected with dignity. And so I did. I wrote my book. I eventually finished the book. It ended up being, how many pages is my book? 200 pages of information about my journey. When I first started, how it affected me as a person, how I became anxious and agitated, how it affected my physical health. My blood pressure was always elevated. I felt faint and I just was dehydrated. Oh, I was trying to care for him and I was neglecting myself. So I also learned on this journey that in order to give your loved one the best care that you can, you have to take care of you also. Or else you'll be gone before the loved one. My husband lived until August 11, 2023. And from that, I promised myself and I promised God and I promised my husband that I was going to advocate for those caregivers and those that they love and those that they care for until I meet my husband one day. And so that's what I've been doing. I planted my non for profit Dementia Dignified Academy. And what we do is we train caregivers, health professionals, anyone who's going to be touching our loved ones that's living with Alzheimer's or dementia on how to give the specialized care, how to allow them to do and be who they are for as long as they are, how to try to offer them non-pharmacological medications. We use aromatherapy a lot in place of your pharma meds. How to allow them to work in areas, know who the person is. My husband was a physician, so what did I do? He wanted to wear his lab jacket, let him wear his lab jacket. I would put his stethoscope around his neck because those things brought back happiness and familiarity to him. And so we train people that you have to know the person you're caring for. Who were they? What did they love to do? And so you continue to try to bring those things to the plate, to the table, so that they can feel loved and feel needed and feel worthy. And so that's what we do. We spread the word in my community, especially among our people, because we as African Americans don't like to talk about it. We have this thing about what goes on in the Jordon house stays in the Jordon house. And so we're trying to say we got to come out of the house and we have to share what we know because being informed with this disease, you can get early diagnosis and early treatment. And so, Michelle Mason. And Michelle is the founder of Ending Disease. And we've partnered together. She sits on the board and she's the COO of Dementia Dignified Academy. So we go all over the place and we present workshops, one that we call Journey of Compassion. And it just takes audience through understanding the disease, role play, and we train them on the specialized care. And at the end of the training, they can receive CEUs and become dementia connection specialists. We use the model from Dr. Jennifer Stelter's model from Dementia Connection Institute. We use her model in our Journey to Compassion workshop. So we're doing a lot. We go out into communities, talking to the senior community. We go to churches to allow them to understand that they may have someone in their congregation that's living with dementia and they don't know how to deal with it. If the person has an outbreak or start repeating themselves and they don't know, they start to give them the side eye. And so we go in and train them on how to prepare and make ready their church to become dementia friendly. And so we're just walking, our feet have hit the pavement. And for every corner that we can, be on to get the word out, that's what we do. And we've incorporated quite a few partners. Flourish Research is a clinical trials entity. We partnered with them because we want our community to know the importance of clinical trials. That will help us to be in the number as they're trying to find the cure for this disease. We want to be able to say that, our DNA was in that clinical trial and that may need to be something specific for the various, ethnic groups. We don't know. And so, but we want to encourage them so that they will feel, safe in participating in clinical trials.
Culturally, the numbers say, you guys get it more than us. And so it's critical to be part of those studies. We're finding over and over, how many different types of dementias there are and that people can get multiple dementias. And there's so much, like you said, that we can do to change. So I love your holistic approach. I think it's beautiful. I adore Michelle. She's just absolutely incredible and creative. So how lucky are you that you've got her on your board? I wanted to ask you, you had said that you placed your husband. What year did you place him into a community?
2019.
And then you also mentioned your book, but we need a name.
Journey of Compassion. And it's an Alzheimer's Caregiver Unveiled. And the subtitle is Empathy and Loving Strategies for Dementia Care.
Okay, wonderful. We definitely want to be able to shoot people that way. Your journey in some ways is similar to mine, except mine was with my mom.
Yes.
Like you had no idea about this. You had no desire or calling to step into this space, and then you see the effects on your loved one, you see the effects on yourself and family and friends, and you look around and go, all right, where's that support? All these other
Yes.
diagnoses have support and systems and things, and it's almost like you walk into a quiet room. I mean, there's just nothing when
Yes.
you first hit the wall with this stuff, and it's so important because it affects people, in their lifestyles, financially, emotionally, their social circles. I mean, it's absolutely endless, and yet there's not one right or wrong way or one thing that's going to help everybody. So you really, I don't know if you found this, but I had to kind of pull up my big girl panties and go, you're not in control of this, and you have to be flexible, Lori. And I know that's not you. You like to be in control. And so
Yeah.
it's
Yes.
a huge learning lesson in terms of getting more creative, being more playful. When you were talking about playing cards with him, and kind of making up the rules as you go, I
Yes.
think I have a little 2-year-old granddaughter, and she comes up, and the kids live with me, and she comes up pretty much every night, and she gets my little like tabletop, if I'm sitting in my recliner where I put my computer usually, and we put that on my lap, and she gets a deck of cards, and we can't do a whole lot at 2,
Right.
so we play war, and then she changes it up, and she'll take my cards and switch her cards, and she giggles, but the joy is so profound. And I
Yes.
saw that same joy doing that with my own mom,
Yes.
stepping into her world, and it just melts my heart on either level. There's so much that we can do to stay connected and make people feel purposeful and engaged and accepted. And to me, I mean, it makes my life worth living, being able to do that with others.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I know with my husband, when he was in the long-term care facility, he wanted to wear his lab jacket. And so I did. I took the lab jacket there, and I told him when he dressed, let him put on his lab jacket. He had his stethoscope, and I bought him a journal, and he used that journal to write his progress notes. Now,
I love it.
we would go into some of the other residents' rooms. I mean, he wouldn't do anything but to ask, "How are you feeling?" And they would tell him, and he would write his notes. And then at the end, he would give them their diagnosis, and he would write orders. And he did that, and that gave him joy, and they allowed him to do that, because early on, of course, sometimes they become walkers or wanderers, and so that at least kept him busy doing something as he was walking. And I would say that he just recalled that that's what he did when he made rounds.
Yep.
He would go see his patients, walk that hall, and go in and talk to his patients, and so he continued to emulate that during this period of time. uh, I required them to make sure that he was in the activities area. I got to a point where he could not do the same thing, or he wasn't as mobile to do the same thing as some of the other residents, but I told him to let him do what he can do.
Absolutely.
Don't just let him sit there. He may not be able to throw the ball, but he may be able to hold the ball and touch, the fabric of the rubber, and that may do something for him. So, the important thing that I teach caregivers or is that you put your loved one in a long-term care facility, but you just don't leave them there. You have to be present. And I looked at those helpers at the long term care facility as my helpers. I couldn't do it 24/7 myself, but those were my helpers. And so they helped me to navigate the journey. And we did it together. They understood my requirements because I never gave up my lead caregiving role. I still gave the orders on how to care for him. The doctor gave the orders on the medication, and sometimes I didn't even agree with that
Mhm.
because you're over medicating him, and so he's not even able to respond. And so that's what I insisted. Let's try some aromatherapy. Instead of you giving him that melatonin at night, I want you to give him some lavender. You know,
Mhm.
I want you to do other things to try to, calm his anxiety. And so, we just work together. And so I instill that information into others. Now, Michelle and I also have a support group,
Mhm.
and it's virtual. And it's every
Wonderful.
Thursday from 6 to 7 p.m. And what people do is they either go to our email address
Mhm.
and they can request an invite. And they come on and we, have various topics, and then we do check-ins at times so those who need support can let us know what they may be struggling with, or what they've done that can help another person that's on the platform. So we found it to be very, 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 very encouraging and very much needed. And so, like this Thursday, we're on and we're going to have Flourish Labs. Will be on to talk about clinical trials. And then I have Dr. Cherie Yarborough. She will be on to talk about um, caregiving, the process of caregiving. She too wrote a book, and she did a wonderful job in providing an exercise on how you care for yourself and how you go through your own recollection of your relationship with your loved one, so that you can't be a good caregiver because you're stuck on some things that may have been between you and the one you're caring for. And so you have to get inside of yourself and resolve those things so that you can be a better caregiver for the loved one. So we're going to be talking about those things on Thursday.
Yeah, and that's really a good point to bring up the family dynamics, because there are people who were raised in abusive homes that are like, I don't want to care for this person. They didn't care for me when I was little.
Yeah.
And then sometimes they luck out, and people might go luck out, but certain types of dementias can change personalities, like frontal temporal lobe. They might have had somebody who was really abusive, who's really kind and sweet now, and I've had like daughters and sons go, where was this person all my life? I like this person.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then, but it can go the other way too, where sweet and nice is also, starting to swear like a sailor, and, getting sexual with people and inappropriate. And they're like, who is this person?
That was my husband.
Yeah.
He was a laid back, calm. We call him a laid back, calm kind of cat. Never got ruffled, and just was always the one that could just calm down the storm. And then he became the storm. And so, and we're like, okay, now what do we do with this? So it was a learning experience. And one thing we had to learn is, why was he sometimes reacting like that? It could be he was hungry. It could be he was in pain, but he could not verbalize that. So even in caring for a person, you just don't write it off as, oh, his personality's changed. Now he's cursing like a sailor. Well, let's kind of maybe find out why.
Yep.
And so that's the kind of things that we try to impress upon the caregiver, is don't give up on your loved one. Don't you get angry, but it may be your loved one's way of saying, my mouth, I can't chew, I got a toothache, or, my knees, that arthritis is working up and I'm mad. So,
Yep.
yeah.
Yeah. Or it could be, kind of, what I found is, as the disease progresses for some, the ego gets out of the way and they don't really care what other people's responses are.
Right.
Maybe they never use those words, and it's like, well, now it's kind of fun. Now they're putting it in a different light and they're not going to worry. But it could be, a urinary tract infection. I mean,
Yeah.
those come out every way from sideways. I mean, you don't know what is going to happen when somebody gets a urinary tract infection. And then they get on the medication, to clear up the bacteria, and boom, they're right back to where they were. So it's
Yeah.
important, like you said, to address those things and, talk with people in support groups, but also, go to the doctor. Make sure you have someone who's familiar with dementia, though.
Yes,
You know,
because a lot of doctors are not.
yep,
And they send you on a wild goose chase.
yep.
And they don't want to even acknowledge. Like, my husband was able to convince his primary care physician that there was nothing wrong with his memory.
Yep.
That he was, like I said, he convinced me that he was preoccupied. And especially because they had that colleague connection. He says, you're a doctor, you know how much over how overwhelmed we can be. I'm just preoccupied. And so I did have to take the doctor to the side and says, look, I'm telling you what's going on in my house. And there is some definite changes. And you have to insist on going to the next level. And so we, teach those that we are training. There are other, you need to see a neurologist to get a definitive diagnosis.
And one that deals with dementia too, because there's neurologists that don't deal with dementia that might not do a great job too. Though they've gotten, I think overall they've gotten more educated in that area.
I'm sure that they have. At least they'll know what kind of cognitive impairment that the person is having. Because I found out that a lot of people do not understand dementia versus Alzheimer's. You have to. Alzheimer's is a dementia. And then you have to go with the umbrella and all the different types of dementias that fall under there. And I told them that you need a definitive diagnosis so you'll know what type of dementia it is, so they're getting the proper care for the type of dementia that they may have been diagnosed with.
Yeah. So, I always tell people it's kind of like, it's like a cold. The doctor doesn't write down in your file, you got a cold. They have some medical, phrase that's an actual diagnosis, but like cancer or like a cold, those are terms. It's just a category that you get thrown in, and then there's all kinds of different things you can have within those categories. Because I know a lot of people think, if someone says you've got dementia, they think that's an actual diagnosis, and it's just really a category.
Right.
And then they're like, well, what do you mean? And then I'll use like the example of either a cold or cancer. Breast cancer is treated very differently than prostate cancer, and so you got to have the right one. And we know, and I don't get into a lot of the medications and things like that because I'm not a medical professional, but I know, boy, if you get the wrong medications, it can make life a lot worse on the person with the dementia and, and also the care partners and the people around them. So it's really important to not feel ashamed that you don't know, because none of us know this stuff. I mean, I'm still learning. I'm tossed back into dementia right now with a neighbor, a friend, and a loved one. And, my mom lived with dementia for 30 years. And upon diagnosis or upon her death, we had an autopsy. And we were always told it was Alzheimer's. Well, the autopsy showed Alzheimer's, Lewy body, and Parkinson's. She got the trifecta. We never knew about the other things. We never discussed them. And as much as things have improved as far as education, in some areas, the needle hasn't moved barely at all.
Yes.
Because most people still go to the doctor, and it takes 2 to 3 years to get to the right doctor, to get those matches. So if your gut is going, this isn't my answer, this is still not feeling right, or I'm not being heard, ask for a second opinion, then start tapping into these groups. Because even if you don't have a formal diagnosis, you step into those groups and they're like, we didn't either. It took us a while too, So you really don't. And everybody I have found, anyways, in the years that I've really stepped into this, which has been since 2009 and a little bit before then, they're also welcoming. They understand the frustration. They understand the emotions that you're going through, but they also have a ton of resources that they're very much willing to share, and ideas and strategies and things like that. I mean, I'm just amazed at support groups and how giving they are, and welcoming people, because they felt like you at one time, kind of a lost, isolated soul that's going, okay, I feel like I'm living in a cray world, and I'm exhausted, and I don't know what to do, and I don't know who else to ask.
Yeah. And that's what we found, that we have surrounded ourselves with a lot of partners because it's all kind of interconnected. We partner with an organization called Rooted in Dignity, and she does more end of life training, talking about, helping with power of attorney and the things that you need in place before you can't get it in place. So we connect with her, and we get a lot of calls for a person that's the loved one has just got diagnosed, maybe with Alzheimer's or some other dementia, and they're needing to do that power of attorney right away before the loved one cannot make a decision for themselves. So we connect with them, and we connect with other community organizations. So we kind of work together to make it holistic, and thus the resources that people need. I didn't have that when we first started. I didn't. I had to really kind of go out and search on my own for support group. The Alzheimer's Association was the only place that I knew that you called that 1-800 number, and you got their support, which was absolutely wonderful. But I'm learning that there are other organizations out there too, like you said, that offer help in some other areas and resources that can help through that time of frustration and just don't know where to go.
Yeah. Well, and there's not one way to do this. I always, encourage people, and it sounds like you do too, build a toolkit, because what works today might not work tomorrow. It might not work in 5 minutes, or it might work in 10. I mean, the environments change, the people change, just having food and hydration and
Yes.
sleep can make it change. There's a lot of little factors that I think we overlook. And to me, it's kind of multisensory communication.
Yes.
And I think one of the most stunning things that I find is that people just assume, well, I told them that, and we're just relying on our words, and we're not understanding that, as somebody progresses with this disease, like they always say, look at me, because I'm reading all your facial expressions. If your arms, are you mad? Are you happy? I'm reading all of this, plus the tone of your voice, and I'm reading your lips, because they always say to me, people living with dementia, when I on dementia chats, where we pick topics, and there I look at them, I stage them as the experts because they know what works and what doesn't. And they say our brain is like Swiss cheese. The problem is, from moment to moment, we don't know where the holes are going to be. So it might be really important for me to be able to visually see you, and that's going to help me understand what's going on, versus you going, grab your jacket out of the closet. And they look around
Yeah.
going, what's a closet? You know?
Right. Right.
And go get, I mean, there's just all these little things that we tend to get frustrated over, not realizing they're not pulling our chain. They're not trying to set us up. They honestly don't know.
They don't know. I'll tell you, the incident was so funny. It's sort of along that line. You have to understand what the person is going through and the frustration that they are having, because they're frustrated because they can't get you to understand what their needs are. But there was a woman in the long-term care facility once I was there, and it was in the evening, and they were trying to serve her dinner. And she was refusing dinner because she hadn't had breakfast. She says, I don't want this. They haven't given me my breakfast yet. Although she had had breakfast. Well, she didn't remember she had breakfast. And she was ranting and raving and cursing, and they were going to insist that she eat the dinner. And I, being me, got up and talked to the nurse. And I says, can you call down to the kitchen and ask them could they fix her some breakfast? Can't you scramble an egg or give her some toast or, some rice or something? All she wants is breakfast. She says, well, we don't do that. I said, you don't do it, but you can do it. Would you ask? Anyway, it went around in circles. Finally, the woman was just gotten so belligerent that they finally called, and the nutritionist says, well, fine. They brought the woman up the breakfast, and she says, it took you long enough. She went to her room. She went to her room. She sat down. She had her breakfast, and she was absolutely fine. And she thanked them for at last bringing her breakfast. So even when I'm saying that even the healthcare professionals don't think, how can you stop this person from being agitated?
Yeah.
It doesn't take a rocket scientist to say, well, let's just see, can we give, you're not fixing, everybody's not asking for breakfast. It's just one lady. And so I think that was a learning experience for them. And they did thank me.
Hmm.
They thanked me for just they hadn't even thought about.
And it's just such a simple thing to do instead
Simple.
of getting everybody riled up in the room, because that energy, it bubbles out to staff and
Yeah.
other residents and family members that are around. Or if they have a tour that doesn't look good. I mean, there's just so many levels instead of there's a quick fix to this and it
It
doesn't take much
is.
time.
And like you talking about hydration, I had to encourage them because most oftentimes if the patient or the person with Alzheimer's dementia is sick and they go to the hospital, the first thing they come out and says they're dehydrated.
Yep.
Okay,
So
so
true.
you're not hydrating them. You're not making sure that they're getting water intake. You may put the water on the table. They don't may know how to pick up the cup or the container to drink the water. You have to physically give them the water, and you need to measure the water to make sure that they're getting the amount of ounces in them in a day. And I had to do that. I bought water. I bought water in the carton because my husband, for a minute, forgot how to drink out of the cup.
Yep.
Didn't want to, he chew on the straw instead of sucking the straw. And so I thought about the juice boxes that we used to give the kids, and you can just squeeze it a little and it comes up. And so I found water in the cartons, and there was had a little flavor to it. And so I provided that water for over a year. And I would tell them he has to have 6 of these cartons a day. That way he would have enough water so that when he goes to the doctor or he gets sick, dehydration won't be the first diagnosis. And so that worked. And so then I introduced that to other family members who were in the long term facility with them, and they began to insist that their loved one, would be given the water. Other little things like, and I tell even at home, plasticware. You're feeding your loved one with plasticware. Well, there's the time when they start to bite down on things. So
Yep.
God forbid if they bite down on a plastic fork and get that in their mouth and swallow it. Of course, you're going to have aspiration. Styrofoam cup.
Maybe even worse, because that could cut their throat going down too.
Yeah,
Those
yeah.
little.
So I mean, it's just so many little tips that you really don't think about on a day-to-day basis. But when you're caring for someone with this disease, you have to think about it on a day-to-day basis, and you have to be very intentional about how you are caring for your loved one.
Yeah. Well, and when you talk about hydration, a lot of times, just seniors in general will stop drinking water if they're starting to have some incontinence issues. So, less in, less out. And so I've seen that so often where seniors aren't drinking the water and then they end up in the hospital because they passed out in the bathroom and cracked their head
Yeah,
open on the toilet or the bathtub. And they're like, oh my gosh, they're so dehydrated. And it's like, and it's all comes down to, they don't want to have an accident. And so that can
yeah,
run. People don't understand when you don't have enough water in your system. Our body is primarily made out of water, especially our
yeah,
brain, but it can also our digestive system. People can get constipated. I mean, the list just goes on and on. It can affect our, medications being absorbed and transferred in the body. I mean, it's endless. And so that
yes,
stuff is really, really critical. Same like, with movement and things like that. People can get off balance and lose coordination or ability to walk and, arm movements. And so even when you said, I want my husband just to hold the ball, if,
yes,
it just have some social engagement, and that's his purpose, to hold the ball for others and someone else will grab it or whatever. But being able to touch and feel and listen and still, just because somebody can't do something doesn't mean they can't do it all. And that is
absolutely.
so often the case. The last thing I'm going to mention is with eating. We did a tour just the other day for a loved one in our family. And I said, I want them to have a meal when we do our tour. Well, why do you want that? And I'm like, I'm not looking for a free meal. I want her to feel the engagement. I want her to see who's around. Are people still verbal? What's going on? Plus, she can get an idea for the food. Well, they knew she was diabetic. And we get at the table, and or before we get at the table, they're touring, and they're like, "Oh, we've got you set up right over here." And I'm like, "Well, I don't really want to be separate from everybody," but I didn't say anything. But the whole point was to be part of, So she
Yeah.
got a feel for the engagement level. We come back. Well, now there's residents sitting at that table and another, and it was a smaller community of just like 10. And she goes, "Oh," and she's like, "Do you still want lunch?" And I said, "Yeah, I want her to be able to." That was the whole point, and the salesperson, like, this never crossed their mind at all, how important this would be. So they got us chairs and we sat around, and the meal was, they raved about their food. I'm so glad we had a taste. The ham was okay. The au gratin potatoes, it was almost like the top of the salt fell off. And I mean, you can go to pretty much any senior community and they don't salt the food a lot because a lot of people have problems with sodium. So
Yeah.
it's a salty ham. You have these really salty au gratins. They didn't have decaf coffee, which most people have in senior housing, versus caffeine. There was just a lot of little things that came up. And then the woman next to us um, wasn't as verbal and engaged. She was in a wheelchair, but there were two other women at the table. One looked all pulled together, but she didn't really talk much. She was pretty shy. I wasn't sure how much she was comprehending, which was fine. And the other one was just this really personable, chatty Kathy telling us everything. So the woman who wasn't mobile, she's trying to get her glass. She's thirsty, but she doesn't have the reach and the mobility and the strength. And the chatty Kathy is telling us, she's like, "I don't know what's wrong with them. Why they put her glass way up there? They know she needs a straw, And so she's, getting the staff and calling them over. And it took them quite a while, in my opinion, too long to get that. And then they didn't really even help her with her food at all. Then another staff came over and talked to us. And, we made a comment about she hasn't eaten yet. Well, 20 minutes has gone by. Her food is cold.
Yes.
And, there were three staff standing behind chatting. And that stuff, I mean, to me as a family member, that's like ching, 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 in not a good way. That I was really unimpressed, with those types of things happening, because I want to place my loved one where I know they're trained, that they understand that they're going to participate with their residents and meet
Yeah.
their needs. And I just thought, we can't do this here.
I know, but but and I think that it's not, it's universal. It happened at both of the long-term care facilities that my husband's at. He was at one, and they stopped giving him the care that I desired, so I moved him to another long-term care facility close, and at least it was closer to my home. However, I observed how they did even at dinner or lunchtime, where you have those. Residents who don't have the mobility, who
Yeah.
can't sit up and eat, that you need to take time to feed them. And of course, they're short staffed,
Mhm.
so they don't have enough staff to go around to spend the quality of time that's needed to feed the resident. Like with my husband, at one point, he had stopped eating and they wanted to put in a feeding tube. And I says, well, definitely, no, 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 we're not doing that anyway. But I'm going to teach my husband how to eat again. And of course, the speech pathologist was afraid he was going to aspirate and all of that. I said, I will teach him. I will be here and I will make sure he's not going to aspirate. And so, but it took me maybe an hour to get him to eat, but I took the hour.
Yep.
And finally, after so long, he began to open his mouth and start to eat again. Not only that, I did the tippy snow, hand under, over, and
Yep.
he began to start feeding himself again. I mean, it
Yeah.
was
It's
almost
that muscle
reversed.
memory. It's retraining that muscle memory a lot of it.
Retraining, and he did that. And
Mhm.
then I watched others that were not, no one is working with them. Let's just say family members. You don't need to put your loved one in a long-term care facility and leave them there like you would leave your clothes at the laundromat. You have to come and you have to be present. But I've seen them where people were unable with the mobility. And they don't even try to feed them, and then they'll take their food back and put it on the tray and take it back to the kitchen. That person has never eaten.
Yeah, and they just note they refused. And
Right.
it's like they're not even refusing; they're just not able. And you didn't.
They're not able to feed themselves. They're not able to eat as fast as you want them to eat.
Yeah.
If you want them to eat in 15 minutes, it may take 30 minutes. It may take 45 minutes. And so, you have to either be there or try to find a facility that has the staff or the understanding of the disease is the most important thing,
Yeah.
and what it takes in order to sustain the person with the disease.
I did a training program on feeding one time because I got so frustrated where my mom was at, and my mom was still able to feed herself. And then, as she progressed, she needed some assistance. But they were good. They had staff sitting at the table with residents. But what drove me through the roof was one person would be in the middle of two people who needed assistance. And so one person they could see, they were all talking with the staff, and then the other one they would just do this, not even know where the mouth was. So one person they could see, and I just so I did a whole training program where I blindfolded the person feeding
Yes.
and made them sit there and feel like what it's like to get a spoon of food poked somewhere on your body. And they were kind of shocked because they don't realize they're doing that if that's how it's been. But I don't want to talk total negative because there's a lot of great places out there.
There is.
And there's a lot of great staff, but you really have to whittle down, in my opinion, especially nowadays, who's the staff there today? Because up here will tell you life is perfect in many, many places, even though they haven't been on the floor because, they're managing multiple sites and they don't really have a hands-on perspective. And, if they know there's issues, a lot of times they won't share. We toured another place, which we talked with the director, and she's like, I'm just going to tell you right now, I'm transparent. She's like, there's good and there's bad and there's ugly, and we're going to address it all because that's the only way we improve. And I'm not going to look at, if we get a tag as a slap on the hand. She's like, I'll be the first one to call the police to make a report, no matter how little it is or big, because it has to be addressed and this has to be a safe community. And I so appreciated just the way she talked and she really knew her stuff. And sometimes we get scared and we'll only look at one thing. And especially today, you can go to the state and see have they had surveys and what are their problems, and you can go, oh no. But if you don't take into consideration, is it still the same management? Is it still the same staff?
Yeah.
What are you have to dig deeper on those things, because especially in memory care, like here in Minnesota, the laws have changed and now they have criteria to meet that they never had before. So they pretty much all failed. The first
I'm looking for because I really advocate for memory care and anyone that's taking care of someone with Alzheimer's or dementia. I really think that the staff should be certified.
Mm-hmm.
They should be certified in dementia care if they're to work in a long-term care facility. And, and we advocate for that. And that's what Michelle and I really try to get in touch with long-term care facilities or home health care agencies for them to use our services or someone's services to get certified so that you understand the need for the person that's living with this disease. It's not the same as a person with cancer or diabetes. I mean, not minimizing those diseases, but our loved ones are not able to speak for themselves, and they are, and they're going to decline. It's not that it's going to reverse. We know what the end is going to bring. So, your staff has to be ready to make those adjustments when they happen. And so we advocate for that. But
know your person and understand the cultural differences as well, because that can make a huge difference in what to expect. And you also have to know the family. Everyone thinks, and I always tell communities this, I know that you think you are just taking on and getting compensated because you have a resident now living in your community. But that is not how the families look at it.
Right. Yeah.
They are paying you to take care of them and
Right.
educate them as well so that they can be supportive and things. Gosh, I could talk with you all day. I want to make sure that we talk about your gala that's coming up, though.
Oh, I'm so excited, and we're trying to pack the room. I'm hoping, but this is our second annual big fundraiser.
Mhm.
So this year we've decided to do a gala, and it's going to be a purple carpet.
Mhm.
We're flying in. Her name is Carla Pryor, and she and another woman who was taking care of her husband. They cared for their husbands, and the husbands lived with Lewy body.
Mhm.
And they did this documentary called Facing the Wind. And I saw it when I went to the Altar Summit in Atlanta last year. That's where I met Carla, and they showed that documentary. And it was just so touching and so moving to follow them through their journey. So we're going to be viewing that at the gala. We're going to be awarding two caregivers the Robert A. Jordon MD Caregiver Award of the Year. That's my husband. We're going to award them the Caregiver Award of the Year. Well, of course, we're going to have fabulous food, and we're going to have nice, soft music that's being played by a DJ, and we'll have a silent auction. And all of our proceeds just go to maybe give someone a scholarship to take our training, to offer respite care when we can, to give a caregiver some relief, to allow them spa packages and all of those things, and to keep our organization, on the move to advocate for those that we have been gifted to care for. So, and that gala is going to be November the 8th at the Irwin Center in Homewood, Illinois, from 6 p.m. until 9:30 p.m. If people were interested, they can go on our website, which is www.dementiada.org, or they can find us the gala on Eventbrite. And so, we just want to share. But we want to have fun, food, and fellowship, and let the caregivers and those that they care for know that they're not alone on this journey. That we're there to empower them, to be the best that they can be, and to reach out and ask for help. And we're there to try to help them navigate that.
Oh, that's fantastic. Do you know what the cost of your tickets are?
Yes, 75.
I would imagine people could just donate to you as well.
Yes.
Through
And
your
you can go to
website?
our website to donate, www.dementiada.org.
Okay, wonderful. Now, if anybody wants to participate in the silent auction, can they do that without coming? Is that going to
No,
be
it's
posted
an
online?
on-site silent
Okay.
auction.
And that's a lot of times the easiest to do. It gets really complicated if it's in both spots and stuff with that. So I understand that. What if somebody wanted to donate something for the silent auction? Do you want certain types of items, or are you
No,
open to a little
no,
bit of
we're not. We're
everything?
not limited to what they, can donate. Whatever they donate, they tell us what the starting bid should be.
Uh-huh.
They can, get in contact with us at our email address, that
Uh-huh.
dignified at dementiada.org, and let us know that they want to donate something for the silent auction, and we'll, coordinate how we can get the item.
Okay, wonderful. Well,
Yes,
that's exciting. And then
it is. We're excited. We're excited.
yeah, you're doing so many good things, and it's critically important for us to be able to share, with others. So for our listeners, I always ask you to be a giver of hope. Let's
Yeah,
like and share, not because we're chasing the numbers. That's not what we're about. We are about spreading the word. And so, to like something or share something, it costs you no money. It takes seconds.
yeah,
Seconds. But there are people within your circles, if it's Facebook or I say Twitter, even though it's X, it'll always be Twitter to me, or LinkedIn, or whatever platform. There are people that you don't know are dealing
Right.
with this because they haven't felt comfortable enough to disclose it, because it's a scary thing to do, to connect and to admit to yourself and your family and friends that this is going on. Or I know with our family, we really didn't tell friends because we were afraid that they might not engage with my mom. And looking back, I'm really sorry we did that, because it was an opportunity to educate them,
Yeah.
along the process, because there's been quite a few of them and their loved ones who have got the disease.
It is so important, but like you say, even I told friends, and exactly what you said. When I told the friends, they distanced themselves
Yep.
from my husband. My husband used to be an avid golfer, and he was with a group of guys, and they golfed at least 2 to 3 times a week. And when my husband starts showing signs of dementia, losing his cell phone or losing his keys and realizing that he couldn't find them, the golf game had to stop. And so, everybody was on the hunt for Dr. Jordan's keys or whatever it is that he misplaced. So then they stopped even calling him to play golf. But they did, but that was okay. But they didn't call to check on him.
Yep.
They didn't call to see how they could help in any way, which is very, very unfortunate, because they could have been educated about this disease. And so I was very, very, very taken aback by the fact of how people withdraw. I try to be there. I have a girlfriend right now. We are high school friends, and every month my high school class, or several of the years classes, we go for lunch, just to stay connected. And my girlfriend is living with dementia, but I make
Mhm.
sure I go and get her every month and take her with me to our alum luncheon. And although she's had a little, setbacks, I called her daughter. Actually, today I called her daughter to ask if she wanted to go, if her mom could go, and she says she would love to go if somebody would just be there to help her get up out of a chair or to sit in the chair. I says we'll definitely be there to do that, because it's important for her to stay connected with her friends. She does not need to be isolated. I mean, she
Yep.
doesn't have some kind of contagious disease that she's supposed to stay away. So we include her. And what I did was I reached out to my group to let them know that she is living with dementia, and that, but she's going to be coming in. We're going to be loving on her like we always do. Yeah. So,
Yeah, it is bizarre how that happens, how people just kind of melt away. And it's kind of right up there with divorce. People like, what side do I pick? What do I say? I don't know what to say. So then I just won't be around, because then I can't make a mistake.
yeah,
And it really is about their feelings, and most of them don't even know it.
right.
They really don't know it. It's just, no, they can't do that anymore, and that's how they present it to the rest of their friends
Yes.
you know
But I always say that I don't, my husband may not have remembered a lot. He forgot, but I remembered my husband.
yeah.
And so I wanted to continue to love him and have others to love him and give him the respect and the dignity that he deserved. And so I was happy with, you know, the journey.
Mhm.
Not that my heart was not broken when he decided to make heaven his home, but I learned a lot, and that was my gift and my assignment, I say from God, to take what I learned to share with others, because we are our brothers and sisters keepers.
Yep. No, I agree with you. I wouldn't wish the disease on anybody, but
Yeah.
I wouldn't have taken 1 second away from my relationship with my mom, because as much as, we hear, and this is one of the big stigmas, is they're not capable and they don't know. And, just think if we heard that all the time: you're not capable and you don't know. And, you can't, that's the reason you can't be with us type deal. Well, they're going to start believing that too, and they're going to give up
Yes.
on life and pull back. And so sometimes
Yeah.
we set that up. But I learned so much from my mom. And, I always say, what's good for dementia is good for the rest of the world. Every lesson I learned through dementia, I can apply with a 2-year-old or a 102-year-old, sick or not. I
Yeah.
mean, it really is about compassion and empathy and communication and understanding we are much more than just tasks, you know. And when you mentioned about your husband wearing his lab coat,
Yes.
you think of how many people die after they retire because their identity is gone.
Yes.
And that happens with dementia for many people. So it's important that we recognize that and we feed that and we love that. And it might look different, but you know what? We look different too.
Right.
We're ebbing and flowing and changing out there too. And that's part of life. It's an active lab for all of us to learn, I think.
And sometimes as a caregiver, we have to realize that we may not be the best caregiver. We may not be the one for the job. And so we have to reach out for help and find someone who is passionate and compassionate that can help us because we may not be able to be the lead caregiver. We may be the person that our loved one is familiar with and love, but for the care that they need, we have to be able to reach out and says, I can't do this. Can you help me in this way? There are people in your churches, in the organizations that you belong to, they're there. They're waiting for you to ask. Sometimes people don't want to invade your privacy, so they won't just come out and say, but they're waiting for you to open up so that they can open up and give you the gift that they have.
Yeah. And so often people do ask, is there anything I can help with? And we go, nope, because we're so used to being in control.
Yeah.
And then we get angry, like, where are they? Why isn't anyone helping?
Yeah.
Well, they've tried, but then then they give
That's
up
it.
and go, she doesn't need our help or he doesn't need our help and stuff. So, well, thank you so much for all this wonderful information. I love talking with you. Tell Michelle I say hi.
I will. I thought she was going to be able to come on the show with me, but she had an appointment. So I'm going to tell her she has to, come on and do the open mic with you when she has a chance. And she has a
Absolutely.
lot.
And she can give me an update too on how the gala went and how.
Oh, I will. I will. I definitely will. Thank you. I appreciate you. And I know that, what you do blesses so many people. And we thank you for that.
Well, thank you. It takes a village. None of us should be out there
Yes, it does.
alone. And so as we raise each other up, we're just helping grow the community to, in my opinion, be more sane, because
Yes.
it can be a crazy journey. And it's okay to say that sometimes. Life was never, this even level playing field before a chronic illness hit. So don't expect it to be now.
Yeah.
We have to be fluid and we have to be loving, and that is totally what you guys are about in terms of your
It is.
education. And it's what I love is it's realistic based. It's not just theory. It's not throwing out numbers at people and defining things. It is helping change perspectives of what is possible.
Yes.
And getting people out of all the things they've heard and really experience at a heart level what's really going on and what a huge, huge impact every single person at any age can have to create joy and comfort on this journey.
It is, because out of this all, I found purpose in my pain and I have found grace in my grief.
Yep.
And so, I have to thank God for the opportunity to go on this journey so that we can come together and help those who feel sometimes that they're all by themselves and they're not.
And you have a wonderful week and an amazing event. And I hope you raise a ton of funds. Okay.
Okay. I'll be in touch.
Okay. Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye, honey. Bye-bye.